Going fast is awesome, right? Doesn't matter whether you're in a car, on a bike, or a roller coaster when you're a kid. You know, we all love going fast. Obviously, here at Bike World, we're keen on bikes. Autocar, a couple of our friends, obviously their thing is cars. And for as long as I can remember, we've had phone calls back and forth between, you know, them at Autocar, us at Bike World, us at Superbike. Always, oh, what have you got? We'll race you with this. We've got this. We'll race you with that. And for as long as I can remember now, we've been doing these car versus bike events. We haven't lost one yet, and I don't intend to let that happen now. We've raced an Ariel Atom, we've raced a rallycross car, we've raced around circuits, we've raced in straight lines, and every single time they come up with this new foolproof formula where they're going to kick our backsides, they're going to pace us because they've got X amount of horsepower and four-wheel drive this. I don't mean to be smug, obviously, it's not me that does it, it's the bike, but every single time, the bike's proved quicker. This time, I was a little nervous. They phoned me up, they've got the new McLaren P1, they've got the new Porsche 918 Spider. Now, for those who are not into cars, those are the best two cars that you can buy right now. They are unreal. So both of these cars, petrol motors and electric motors, combined, it's more for torque filling, so it's not like some shitty Prius where you're trying to get your fuel economy up. The electric motor fills in the gaps in the torque from the petrol motor. These things are fast. So Steve Sutcliffe from Autocar phones me up. We've got these two cars. What have you got? Straight line race, Brunton Thorpe Airfield. I'll be honest, I had to blag and say, oh yeah, I've got something that's going to smash them. In the back of my head, I had no idea what to take. Those cars are quick, and you know, we've won the last few races, but they've never quite turned up with big guns like these. After a few phone calls, I managed to get hold of the most expensive superbike you can currently get, and the highest performance on paper, which is the new Ducati Superleggera, £54,000 worth of bike. It looks initially like it's a fancy pants, rich man's toy, not much different to this Panigale. But believe me, when you start delving into the specs, it is exquisite. It's got a balanced crank, it's got high compression pistons, it's got the compressions massively higher than the standard road bike. It has a magnesium frame, a carbon fibre subframe. Like every little bit of that bike is different to a Panigale, despite the fact they look the same. You know, there's so much development gone into it. And actually, I started getting excited. I thought, you know what, I might just win this one. So we headed over to Brunton Thorpe for a straight line race. £2 million supercars, 150 grand Panigale. So Superleggera, it's not an ordinary bike, you know, this is a limited run bike, you know, they were kind of invitation only to buy them. You don't just turn up to Ducati UK or a dealer and say, hey, can we borrow one of those? We're going to go and race it down a runway. We had a little bit of fun and games trying to get hold of one. In the end, through Ducati UK, we managed to sort out one off a guy called Steve Forster, who was really, really kind and agreed to lend us his bike for the day. And this, you know, this isn't a dealer. This isn't a press bike where they know they're getting. This is this guy's personal bike that he bought because he loved it. He rides at the weekend. It's his little baby, and he was kind enough to say, yeah, you know what, go and smash those cars with my bike. Pressure or what? We turn up to a few of these things now, and you get there, and there's always some sniffing around from either party. So we rocked up to Brunton Thorpe, wheeled this Superleggera out the van, and bearing in mind, these are the guys that were there from Autocar. They were guys from McLaren and Porsche. These are people that spend their lives hanging around £750,000, £1 million cars. You know, the guys from McLaren, you know, they live in, you know, cars over £500,000, so they don't touch anything cheaper than that, really. And these guys all stopped what they were doing and just came over to stare at the Ducati. And it was like silence. Everyone was just open-mouthed. It has that much of an impact when you roll out of a van. Then I hit the start button and it sounded like hell had just escaped. It is loud. All of the Superleggeras come with a race kit. So you get a different exhaust, a different map for the ECU, blanking plates to take your mirrors off on a big screen, paddock stands, stuff like that. The exhaust is an Akrapovic full system, releases another 5 horsepower, so you're up to 205 plus horsepower at the brochure. And about 1 million decibels. I didn't measure it exactly, but it's close to that. It was quite funny, you know, seeing the impact that bike had. When, yeah, 50 grand to us bike guys is a ton of cash, but to those guys, 50 grand, there's a couple of sets of tyres for their cars, but it still stopped them all. It was real funny. Usually when we do these autocar things, there's a specific target, like a 0 to 100 to 0, or a lap of a track, or, you know, there's various statistics that Steve from Autocar or I will have come up with that we go, right, this is our goal today. This one was a little different, and you know, we kind of had this 200 mile an hour idea in our heads, but we kind of didn't think there's not many bikes that will actually top 200 miles an hour. There's no production bike that will top 200 miles an hour currently. So the way the days run is we'll start at one end of the runway, started with one car, put all the data equipment in it, a couple of speed runs from, you know, dead start, fast as you can up to as fast as the car will go down the runway, move on to the next one, jump on the bike, move on to the next one, jump into the other car. And then we'll do a load of other shots for the TV stuff, so we just muck around, pulling wheelies and just kind of showcasing what each of the vehicles can do, which consists of Steve doing massive smoky drifts in expensive cars and me wheeling bikes up and down the runway until they tell me to stop. It's not a bad day all in all. There's no substitute for all lining up in a line and then launching down the runway to see kind of what ends up where.
So close. 918 is 4-wheel drive, so it gets off the line better. I can't see either of them. There's the bike. Oh my God!
But perhaps the most surreal experience I have ever had was being on that Superleggera, absolutely flat out on the stop, tucked on the tank, so much noise, everything's shaking, you're heading towards a big jet at the far end of the runway, and there you are, 192 mile an hour, and a McLaren goes past you on that side, makes you jump. What the hell was that? And then a couple of seconds later, a Porsche. When you look at all three vehicles doing the launch here, you can see here off the line, the Porsche is unreal. You know, that's a 4-wheel drive car, 4 wheels, four lots of traction. That thing off the line was untouchable. You know, however good a launch I got on the bike, I was never ever far ahead of the Porsche. Once everything was kind of settled down and it stopped fighting the wheelies, the bike came into its own there. You know, you just rattling off the gears, and it was funny. Like if I'd got a bad start, you could just see the two cars just reeling them in, absolutely powering up beside them. So you've seen all the runs, you've seen us charging up and down the runway, having loads of fun. We end up pulling a load of data out, plugging it all into a spreadsheet. It's it's kind of surprising, it's good for the bike. Up to 60 mile an hour, it took the Porsche 2.95 seconds. It took the McLaren 3.24 seconds, and it took the bike 3.14. So actually what felt like quite a big gap was 0.3 of a second. So nothing in reality, but in terms of bragging rights, that Porsche, it won the 0 to 60 test. So the bike kind of 80 mile an hour onwards, that Superleggera has got this, it's pulling away. And then what we can do is we can go 180 mile an hour at a realistic top speed. Let's end the game there. We win, bike wins, 16.77 seconds. The bike is doing 180 mile an hour. Just have a think about it for a second. 16.7 seconds and you're doing 180 miles an hour. That is insane. At that point, the Ducati was in the lead, but sure enough, a few seconds later, that McLaren comes absolutely howling past. The top speed of the McLaren, 207 miles an hour that McLaren got to, which is just insane. You know, that is an unreal number of speed. And again, the Porsche, 202 miles an hour. The standing mile speed, so race over a mile, bike won that too. 25.44 seconds to do a mile. Depending on what race you opt for, everyone won. Porsche quickest to 60, bike quickest everywhere else. McLaren tops it once we get past 192. Could look at it happy families, like everybody won one bit, but obviously we actually know the bike won it all because the bike's best. We win. Hooray!